Have you ever thought to yourself and wondered how much the election actually matters to you? That the answer to that question could almost entirely depend on how you what you are informed of on the certain election alone. More the older people and people who are in the workforce are more likely to know what is going on and have an idea about what it is the election is being you could be able to vote for in the election. Teens, however, aren't really informed on this information and can be misled in the wrong way. The argument on whether the voting age should be lowered from 18 to 16 can be determined by a number of factors that could play a role in the teen's development. When you look at how someone learns how to read and write, you see how someone might be influenced by whoever was helping them, including the teachers and the parents. This picture right here shows all the different factors that could play a role in one's reading ability. There's a variety of factors that could be deemed obsolete, such as motor oscular discrimination and language facility, but they could all hinder the child at some point in their life. In my opinion, the biggest factor out of all of these is the home background. Seeing how someone might be influenced by what they see around them as normal might change how other people see that same thing and feel like that person didn't have maybe a good childhood or something. This next picture shows the different parenting styles that are most common in a lot of people. The only one that out of all of these four that would be the best one to raise a healthy child is authoritative, which would make sure you have a good relationship with your child, but still enforcing rules for them to follow, so they have that mindset of knowing that there are certain rules they have to follow. The others were either too strict on them, like authoritarian, or or just too relaxed, like permissive and uninvolved, almost up to the point where they don't even care what their kids are going to be doing. Being limited to certain kinds of things as a young child could keep people from getting those bad habits or to be well behaved. The movie Rio 2, for example, is a G-rated movie, which means that that's a movie that anyone can watch without really any bad things like violence happening. There's no physical forms of it in these movies, which makes them more predicated towards the kid population. Showing your kids movies like this at the beginning can help start them on the right path until they start getting into older stuff or stuff that's all the rage for kids their age. The Hunger Games Mockingjay, for example, is a PG-13 movie, which means that there is a good amount of violence in this movie that kids under the age of 13 shouldn't be watching. It also is probably not a good idea to show this to people who also haven't really seen violence and have them experience that for the first time. What you usually want to do is try to ease them into it. That way they know what they're getting into and have an idea of what's right and what's wrong before seeing what happens in this movie. The people who are for Proposition 18 are believing in kids' ability to do well on keeping track of current events and politics. This graph shows how teens view the social and political issues that are compared to what their parents think. It includes teens who plan to vote either Republican, Democrat, or even those who decide to vote independent. Most of them seem to have the same views as their parents, which would make sense because they're the ones who raised them and raised them under their views most likely. But there are some who vary in their views, which shows their ability to see these issues in their own eyes and not be blinded by any blinders by their parents or people around them about what they feel is bad. This next graph shows how teens describe their own political views, ranging from conservative to liberal. About half of them are indifferent to a specific party. However, the other half identifies themselves on either side of the spectrum. which means that they're paying attention to a lot of the things that are happening in the political world and know like which side they're on based on the views they have on specific issues. Teenagers could seem to be able to do a lot of good things. They could still make some dumb mistakes. This image shows teens and drugs together. 25% of teens who take unprescribed drugs can be risking their lives. For example, if those drugs are painkillers, they're really risking their lives, since 60% of overdose deaths are from painkillers alone, which says a lot, knowing that a lot of college students have stress from college and try to take painkillers to ease out of it. It might not. It might even kill them if they take too much of it at a time. This next image talks about underage drinking that's happening around in the country. 20% of these kids start to drink before they're even 13 years old, and 92% of alcohol this 12 to 14-year-olds end up drinking is from binge drinking alone. Parents should even just keep an eye on their kids just whenever they possibly can, especially to high schoolers, because 90% of high school students, even more than that, say it's pretty easy for them to be able to find alcohol in their house or in their surroundings. People who are against Proposition 18 are those who think kids are too immature to vote in a big election for their country. Prime example of this is how immature and mature people differ in dealing with an argument. Immature ones want to make sure they can do everything they can to win the argument and don't worry about the possible collateral damage may happen with a relationship with a significant other. Mature people are more likely to understand that it could be better to lose a specific argument to be able to keep a relationship with someone intact. These people are also more likely to vote more understandably in the elections, which also shows that immature people maybe aren't the best people to be able to go and vote for the election, because they may have some weird idea that causes them to vote in a different direction than they originally thought. This quote right here shows us how mature people could perceive immature people. Quote, sometimes you just have to sit back and laugh at some people's immaturity. It just makes you realize how much growing up they still have to do, unquote. What this quote is saying is that mature people can see immature people and realize that they still have a long way to go before they can actually be able to be mature. Immature people may not be able to see their own kind, but they could be able to see mature people only because they view people similar to them as just normal and mature people as being different than them. One of the more interesting things about voting is that the lowest age group can vote and has the lowest turnout. This graph right here shows the turnout of the primary election in 2020 in the last 10 years. The youngest voting age, which is 18 to 24, is pretty low compared to the total amount they're given. They did go up in both 2016 and 2018, but they've been relatively low compared to what the total value actually is. This next graph shows the representation among the voters in the state of 18 to 24-year-olds in the last 16 years. They've been hovering right around 3.3% for a while. Then they shot up in both 2016 and 2020. They've still been pretty insignificant and haven't had much of a say in everything that's happening. Teaching some civics to these teenagers could help to keeping them on the right track that their parents have been working so hard on. This map here shows how civics is taught in each of these states. Most of the states require a civics class to be taken for graduation, for yellow ones and blue ones specifically. But some of them are outlined or just not mentioned in tiers in the green and red states. Teenagers in these states are lacking the necessary education to be able to be properly educated in the world of politics and know what is going on in the political world. This next picture shows